Creating a clean plate is a vital part of wire removal. In this tutorial, we'll focus on how to automatically create one of our entire scene using Mocha Pro and MegaPlates. At the end, we're going to have a frame and tracking data that we can take into Silhouette to do our cleanup. So let's go. And let's play our clip back again and look at the next section. So the next part I'm going to do is the easiest bit of the wires, which are the ones which are coming free from the body. So all of this stuff up here, it's free from the body, that is going to be great. And shouldn't cause us many issues at all. Now I just want to create a clean plate, which is just a still image of the background. And there's a number of ways we can do this. We can actually just simply paint directly within Silhouette. But I'm going to do something different because I have Mocha Pro. I'm going to let Mocha Pro do all the hard work for me. And let's launch that UI. Okay, so we're in the Mocha Pro interface. And let's just play this back, just get this into cache. And while this is playing back, I want you to notice something else about this frame. You might not have seen this or might not have paid attention to it when we were watching this in Silhouette. But this frame is letterboxed. So we have hard letterboxing at the top and the bottom. Now this is not going to be an issue, but we have to tell Mocha that we have hard letterboxing on this frame. And we do that within the clip module. So I go over to clip and then I can just drag these down and drag this up at the bottom, this dotted yellow line. And that's going to define the area of the clip that Mocha is going to look for when it's going to do tracking and going to do the rest of the stuff that we're going to do with it. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit just to make sure that I am actually in the right sort of place. Yep, that works. Cool. Let's go back into our track. Let's come back and zoom to fit. And now when we play this back in Mocha, you can see it's cropped off the letterbox for us and just given us our frame as we want it. All right. So what do we need here? I'm going to use Mocha to create up a MegaPlate. And a MegaPlate is an automatically generated larger than raster image of our picture. So basically it's going to create an auto panorama from our image that we can then use to do other fun stuff. And whenever you do removes in Mocha, we need two things. We need a tracked background that tells Mocha what our background is doing. And we need a foreground shape that tells Mocha what to remove. Now, MegaPlates only really needs one thing, and it needs tracking for the background. So let's do that. Now, I'm in the classic workspace. If this is one of the first times you're coming into Mocha Pro, or if you have this set up in Essentials, your workspace is going to look like this. So I'm just going to come to Classic, and that transforms our workspace here. Basically, it's the same functionality. It just means that the icons are in slightly different places. And I'm going to create my first layer that I'm going to use for tracking. Okay, before we find where we want to track, let's play this through and see what type of movement we've got. And it looks like we've just got a nice crane shot following the girl. It means that our background is moving up quite easily as well. I mean, the only movement we've really got in the background to worry about are these birds. There's a little bit of movement in the water we can see, but it's very still. This is great for us. Okay. So I'm going to create up a shape. I'm going to use a rectangular tool, and I'm just going to go around about here, I think. So trying to get some interesting detail that we can see in the water here and also in the background. Because Mocha's playing a tracker, he's going to be trying to track textures here. Now, because we're tracking such a big area, I want to try to weight the shapes across the frame a bit more. So instead of having everything over in one area over here, I'm going to make more smaller shapes to try and get a better looking place. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to use my X-spline rectangle plus, and I'll create another place over here. So that's all right. The problem is with these sorts of backgrounds, we don't really have a lot of detail inside them. So there is the possibility that this little grad could start to slip up a little bit. I'm going to add one more little shape. I'm going to bring that down to the water. I can only really do this because the water itself is very smooth, very static. If these were waves that you could visibly see or sparkly, I wouldn't be able to do this. So by adding in these three shapes, I'm telling Mocha not to place too much emphasis on one particular area. So I don't want, too much emphasis placed on, something like the gradient here, where there is no real texture information. Okay, so let's come down to our motion. I'm going to track in perspective, because even though this looks like it's just a simple crane shot upwards, any sort of a tilting in the camera will have a certain amount of shift. So even though it just looks like a translation, and it probably is just a translation, I'm going to see if I can get better results using perspective. I'm going to leave everything else at default, and I'm just going to track this forwards, and we'll see what we get. He says, knowing that there's probably going to be a problem in a little bit. All right. Excellent. So here we go. Here's the problem we got. Well, one of the problems we've got. The biggest problem is everything's looking great until our singer's hand or actress's hand is going through that little area. Now, if this was just like a small movement going in, then Mocha would probably ignore it. This was sort of fast in and out. But it's not. It's a long, sustained movement. So Mocha now thinks that these pixels are going to be important enough to track. I don't think they are. So what we're going to do is let's turn off visibility in our background track. I'm going to actually double click on my layer 2, rename it background track. I'm going to turn off tracking cog, and I'm going to turn off the visibility. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a very basic X-spline, very large, quick and dirty X-spline around our girl here. And I'm going to use this as a track map. So I'm going to call this one girl track mat. Click, click, click. And I will just quickly track the translation on this, just so that I don't have to manually do everything myself. Move this forward, and then I can come in, let's hold down X to pan around. And at the bottom here, you can see where I've got my transform window on. If it's not on, press that button there. If I hold down Control on Windows or Command on Mac, I can then just distort that into place. And I hold down X, pan us around, bring us over here. I can even sort of shrink this down a little bit just to make the garbage mat a little bit smaller. There we go. I'll do the same going backwards. So track it through and then just add some basic simple keyframes afterwards. Getting around about there. Hold down the Control or Command key just to distort us into place, and then because these are generally in the right sort of area, I can bring that into place there, and then hold down Control or Command, place that where I need it to go, and that works on the selections there. And it's just a garbage mat, so I'm not going to spend too much time getting it really tight or close. I don't really want that. And we can see that builds over, those keyframes build on top of the tracking data. So that's looking good. So as long as I've got all of my shape cutting out all of the girl, I'm going to be happy. There we go. So I can now use that as a track map. Excellent. So what does a track map mean? Well, it just means that this area now is going to be cut out of the area that Mocha is going to be tracking. If I click on this button here, which is my layer mats button, you can see it's going to be cutting out that there. All right. It hasn't changed any of the tracking I've already done, obviously, but it sets us up for another good round of tracking soon. Now I'm going to do something slightly differently now. We're going to track in the first area, but I'm going to start from the opposite end, because the opposite end of the clip is where we have a lot more interesting texture. So we have all of this kind of mountains texture here, which is going to be pretty good to track. Bring this back down. Bring this back down as well. I can probably bring this down so it's only just above the edges of the mountains there. And let's retrack. And I'm going to pay very special attention now as the shapes go off the screen, because this could be quite tricky for us. Yeah, there we go. That's it. I knew this was going to happen. So you can see that wobbling happening there. That's not great, because that's something that's happening as the shapes, the mountains are going off. This is a message from Ben in the future. It turns out that the real reason that these shapes were slipping was because I left a pixel of the black letterboxing when I cropped in the clip tab. I do fix this in a little while, but let's get back to see how past Ben got the track working anyway. Okay, so I'm going to go to my last good frame here, and I'm going to change the position of the shapes to update where Mocha's looking. And the reason we can do this is because Mocha is a planar tracker. So as long as the areas where we're moving to are coplanar, means they share a similar motion with the camera, all this is going to work out absolutely fine. So let's play this back. I'm going to look at my grid, and I'm going to look at this horizon line here and make sure that stays in the right place all the way through. And that's looking pretty good. I'm going to take another look at another random point. Let's turn off the overlays here. And this is something that I always do. Let's take a look at this point on the grid here. Let's see if that stays in the same place. And it doesn't. It means that Mocha's giving us a bit more of a perspective change than we probably actually need. We can see that there as we go through. Look at that. It's a bit of a perspective shift. Let's come back into the dope sheet. Let's delete these frames. You don't have to get rid of these keyframes in the dope sheet unless it's affecting your tracking. I'm doing it here to keep things neat, and it makes things easier for you to see what I'm changing. There we go, and we'll retrack this. Now, you might be thinking, why am I spending so much time trying to get this right? And the reason is simple. If we don't have great tracking data now, it's going to ruin basically everything else we want to do with the shot. Good paintwork relies on good tracking data. Without great tracking data, we're going to be doing a lot more manual fixes to our shot. And every time we start to do manual fixes, it's another opportunity for us to make a mistake and for the fix to be visible, giving the game away. We could get away with a ton of this stuff, but it's not really worth trying to save 3 minutes at the start, which is going to cost us 30 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes on the other end. So here I'm going to just change my track motion just to translation. So just tracking in X and Y, and let's have a look and see what happens when we try to track that in now. Because this translation should be good enough actually for the background, which is really where we're most focused on. I don't really care what's happening too much at the bottom, so long as our background looks right. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, so how do we check this? Well, because we're in Mocha Pro, there's actually a very easy way of checking this. If I go into the Stabilize module, I'm going to smooth out all motion. I'm going to give us maximum smoothing. And I'm just going to press play. And if we're completely stable, then it means that the background here shouldn't move at all. All that should happen is that the girl moves in our shot, and we've cancelled out the rest of the movement. I can see there's a little bump. See that little bump just there? Means we're not completely stable. I'm interested in what's happening down at the bottom here, but I'm more interested in what's happening up at the top. So with our CTI, current time indicator, set over to the final frame, I'm just going to add that final frame to the frame list. The frame list is a really useful feature of the stabilized module. It tells Mocha which frames should be used as anchor frames. This is the original frame, and the stabilization data moves around the image from this frame. We can have multiple frames in there if we were doing actual stabilization, but I just want to see frame 101 as my starting point. We will be using this frame list again later with Power Mesh, so remember it. And this puts all our focus on this frame, which is frame 101. And there you can see it. You can see it really easily. Boom. That's no good. That's not what we want at all. So it just means we need to retrack these frames. So I come back into tracking, come back up here, and I can see why I've not tracked with the mountains as the focus there. So I can easily see why that slipped a little bit if it's just trying to find something in the haze. I'm just going to come in. I'm going to go to the dope sheet. Just for my own sake, I'm just going to delete all of these keyframes just so I can see the bit that is still untracked. Keep translation on, track that through. Let's see that that doesn't slip anymore. Excellent. Okay, let's have another look back in stabilize. When I deleted all those frames in the dope sheet, I did also delete my frame list frames. So let's add that back in. Let's play that back. There we go. No slipping anymore there. Turn off the overlays one more time. Go. Just play that back. I'm studying. That frame in the background looks pretty good. Okay, cool. All right, excellent. So now we know that our track is good. We have a good track map. I want to make a MegaPlate. So I'm going to use that tracking data to make my MegaPlate up. Let's turn off all of the visibility on the other layers so we can just focus on this. Now, what I need for a MegaPlate is exactly what I need for a remove. So what I need here is a shape that is going to be big enough to fill all of the motion from that camera. So I'm going to create a shape that's probably around about this size. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, hold Z down, just click and drag. And this is going to be my basis for my MegaPlate. There we go. And I want this to match the movement of my background track. So I'm going to link that to track, background track. Let's see if that actually does fit in all of the pixels that I need. We're a little bit missing there. I'm going to turn on the Uber key to make sure that I don't select any or don't set any more keyframes. Bring this up a little bit. Go to the front. Uber key is still on. Bring that over there. Bring that over there. And now I have a shape that is big enough. Now I have a shape that is big enough to describe the whole of the movement within the frame. So this is basically my new frame. There we go. So now I'm going to create a MegaPlate. And MegaPlates work best when I'm sort of midway in the movement of the shot, because Mocha's going to be looking forwards and backwards from this frame to fill in the areas of the frame that we have here that we can't see. So I'm going to come midway in, and I'm at frame 57. Okay, I'm going to bring my MegaPlate underneath my girl track mat. We will find out why soon. Let's come into MegaPlate. Now, if you've ever used the Mocha Remove module before, then the MegaPlate module is going to look very, very similar. It's really based off the same technology. And I'm going to change just one thing first. I'm going to change just the step to auto step. So this will just speed up processing a little bit. And I'm going to hit render. Mocha's going to have a little think. And it's going to create up my MegaPlate for me. Okay, this is interesting. Check out what's happening here. You can see this line up at the top. And this line down at the bottom. What could possibly be creating those? Yep, that's right. If we go into our clip here, we can see that it's, I haven't gone in, I haven't cropped up my frame enough. So I'm going to change that to 121 and 121 at the top and bottom. Come back into MegaPlate. Show you let's go into the viewer and just have a, not map for MegaPlate, there we go. Just have a look at the MegaPlate there. Let's just re-render that one. And boom, that line is gone. So that is a definite sign that I needed to add a little bit more of a crop in there. Another sign that we might need to crop a little bit more on those hard-coded letterboxes is if your mat is swaying a little bit at the edges. So just come in and crop that out a little bit more. That's not bad. Okay, so it's filled in more of the details. So it's taken that to there. Excellent. Okay, so let's zoom back out to fit. Let's try and automatically remove our girl from this plate now. Let's turn the visibility, turn on the cog for our girl track mat, and I'm just going to come in and hit remove foreground. So this has then analyzed things up and tried to remove the foreground where best it could, based off of what we were doing in the input layer. So the black areas that we've got, and let's have a little look in the MegaPlate there. Yeah, the black areas we've got now are areas where MegaPlate couldn't get any detail, couldn't get any information. And the reason for that, if we go into our selected layer, it's because I've used a huge area here for the track mat. So I've basically excluded out all of that area. Now, if I had more complex information in the background, I'd make this a little bit tinier. But actually, if I come back into our MegaPlate here for a second, pretty much all of this is going to be white anyway. So I don't really care too much because I can just fill this in. I need to do a little bit of touch-up work anyway for the parts where Mocha couldn't find a clean frame. It's not going to be an issue for me just to paint this area in here. At this stage, I could just paint up this plate and use Mocha's own remove module to remove the top wires. But I'm not going to do that this time. I want to introduce some ideas back in Silhouette. So that's where we're going to be doing the bulk of the work. So now we've got our MegaPlate, I'm going to render this out. So we go into MegaPlates here. I can now create a MegaPlate. And let's just create a new folder. I will call this one cleanplate. And we'll use this naming convention here. It's Mega Cleanplate input 57. So I know that we are on frame 57 in from Mocha. Okay, so I need one more thing before we go away from here. And I need the tracking information from frame 57 if we're going to match move this clean plate in. So let's come into our track. Remember, I was using the background track to drive all of this. So let's just turn that on for a second. I'll turn off the other layers. And let's turn on the surface. And this is really important. The surface is the tracking data, or our representation, I should say, of the tracking data that we're going to be taking out from Mocha. So this has to sit exactly in the center of this frame. And how do we do that? With the align surface. So I'm just going to click on that there. That now fits my surface exactly into the center of this frame. So it's going to drive all of the information from frame 57. Amazingly important. I'm going to export this track. I'm going to export it out as a silhouette corner pin track. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, but I'm also going to save it out so that we have a folder just for our Mocha tracks. And I will call this one MegaPlate background track. Let's export that track one more time. I'm just going to copy it to the clipboard because I can take this into Silhouette now. In this section, we focused on creating a clean plate in Mocha. We've prepped the clip to remove letterboxing, tracked the camera movement, and using a track mat to remove our actors' movements from the calculations. And from that, we've created our MegaPlate to use as a clean plate. And then use that same tracking data to create match move data for how the background moves. In the next part, we'll return to Silhouette and use this to create our actual painted clean plate to remove our top wires. Bye for now, and I'll see you in exercise 3.